Howdy, folks. Happy Tuesday. We got a day where there's no NBA final, no Stanley Cup final. So this is one of those lull days where there's not much going on other than the Yankees beating the Mets, Jan. We'll start with Peter, who had an interesting evening on social media last night.
So, like most of Canada, we're a little caught up in this whole NBA thing with the Raptors, and it's fun. There's one team. It's and for all the baseball fans out there, which you guys are, it's not unlike what happened with the Blue Jays in 92 and 93.
Yeah.
Lots of passion, fun. Canada is the state of California in terms of population. That's your reference point. So I made some comments, and I was really taken aback when I'm watching the post game from the Raptors Warriors game last night, which was an incredible game when you think about what the Warriors went through losing KD and all this. So I made it, and I was really taken back by the Warriors president. I think it's something Tim or Tom Myers.
Bob Myers.
Bob Myers.
I thought it was
on,
the
and he's like wiping tears away, talking about KD and everything. So I just put out a tweet. I said, Durant doesn't have a life-threatening injury here. He's injured, and life-threatening. Threatening being the key word.
It's career-threatening, though, Peter.
Career, not life-threatening.
Right.
He's had an amazing career.
Yes.
No one's degrading Durant here. I'm not like jumping up and down that he fell when he was injured. I'm just like, why is this guy crying? And so a friend of mine in Winnipeg, who is a basketball writer, sort of didn't retweet it, but he replied to some of the reasons, which I knew were obvious because he's a free agent, but I didn't realize there's all this backstory between the relationship between the organization. Was completely ignorant. So I'm asking, why is this guy so emotional? Holy mother, did the posse come after me? I was told last night, and I didn't understand this. So finally, some Warriors fans sort of explained to me this. They said, well, that makes sense. But there's obviously a really deep, dark history between the organization, sect of the fan base, and even some players. When people quoting me what Draymond Green said about him or towards him in the media and stuff, that there's a whole bunch of drama and a lot of misinformation here. And that's why I was asking, what is going on? So it was actually, it wasn't like to troll the fans. I was like, seriously, why is this guy so emotional? And man, did I get it. And I wasn't sure why I was getting it. So, and before that, I sent out probably a few rather derogatory responses to people for the things I was getting back. And now I'm hunted in Oakland, and a guy was threatening to come up and find me. It was quite entertaining. So I gotta go head down to Oakland, Alameda, and just sort of plant my butt down there and say hi sometime, see what goes wrong.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this, and the reaction of this morning was greater than it was right after it happened. When Durant pulled up with what's supposedly now a torn Achilles, the fans at Scotiabank Arena briefly cheered. And then
there's also a play that happened right then too. There were some who didn't even realize he pulled up because the ball was stolen too. It was a weird scenario, but yeah, there were people cheering when he went down.
Right. And then Kyle Lowry
and Green, I think, stepped in.
Yeah. And other players, they went like this and then they applauded, but there was some heat directed at the Raptors fans for that. And, I'm not apologizing for them, but honestly, what fan base in a game where you're 3/4 away from winning a title and the best player on that team comes back and he gets hurt again, what fan base is not doing that? I think everyone. I think they caught themselves. They reacted the way with class afterward, but I didn't get all the criticism because I think a lot of cities and a lot of fans would have done the same thing. But the one thing I thought was idiotic was I heard on Toronto radio this morning the criticism of the Warriors, basically saying, well, you should have never put Kevin Durant in if you didn't know, if you knew this was potentially a career-threatening injury. You don't think Durant and his agent signed off on this? Of course they did.
So that's part of what was really interesting is this happened, a lot of things came out that if you're sort of not a fan of the Warriors, but you know how great they are in their dynasty, but you don't know all the total details, and maybe you're like myself, you know, you like watching basketball, but you're not a super fan and pay attention to it like I do hockey.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff going on there. And you know,
Peter,
we'll point out how good Durant was until he went down. Had he not been in the lineup and no one compensated for him, the Warriors don't win that game.
That's
what he meant to that game.
You had 3 triples in the first quarter, 11 points by the time
11 points in 11 minutes.
I mean, a lot of it was this you talked about was the injury was whether quote unquote was misdiagnosed originally. Yeah. Was it really a calf injury or an Achilles injury? Did he go through full-blown practices or only really more walkthroughs? Yeah. He was bringing some stuff I saw recently that was bringing the ball up court a lot more, which put a lot more torque in terms of the starting and stopping on him as opposed to being able to more of a spot-up shooter. So, look, all of this is a factor. It could cost him, as you said, Mike, an inordinate amount of money because if it is a full tear, you're looking at a year absence at a minimum. Yeah. And the question is whether or not he comes all the way back and what that does to free agency, given, especially for me in the local area in New York, the conversations of the Nets, the Knicks. That's been a huge factor in terms of Irving and Durant. So
he's got a player option with the Warriors, so he could sign for. He could just say, "I'm taking that and get $31 million and stay and rehabilitate."
Correct.
But it's funny, and we'll get to hockey here because I know that's what everybody wants to talk about. Hayek was the fact that the defense, the greatest defense of the fans in Toronto came from Steph Curry, because Steph Curry. You know, his dad, Del Curry, played for the Raptors, and he spent part of his youth there. And he said, I know these fans. I know the city. You know, that's it was an instant reaction. I mean, I'm just paraphrasing here, but he came in a way to the defense of Toronto. So I thought that was a pretty good thing.
Yeah. And when he was walking off, they clapped him off and stuff. I mean, look, I agree with your original assessment, Mike. I think, if you're in the heat of the moment at that point on a championship game, you're probably going to let out a oh my God. And that's going to sound like cheering or like, holy crap, or whatever expletive and blah, blah, blah. And it's going to come across as cheering for it, but it's more like shock. Like, I'm watching the game with my wife and I was like, we both jumped up and went, oh my God, Durant's done. And it wasn't like we were cheering for it. It was like, this is massive.
But if you had a Stanley Cup final between Philadelphia and Edmonton and Connor McDavid breaks his leg at Wells Fargo, Philadelphia fans are cheering.
Oh, we're going to go there, Michael, are we?
Mike. We're just Stanley Cup final. I mean, come on. We're minding our own business while you talk about this ridiculous sport. And we're sitting here just like, okay, fine.
Let's go there. Let's not pick on Philly fans. If you have a Stanley Cup Game 7 final and Tarasenko goes into the boards hard tomorrow, you don't think Bruins fans are going to be up on their seats? In 2011, when Mason Raymond was driven headfirst through the boards and he was getting carted off, they were standing. There's video on YouTube of them going faker.
Tell me all about this classy fan base, Michael. Thank you.
Anthony, here we go.
This is just me doing my Kermit routine over here.
I'm starting to fire, baby.
Jen, you need to book a flight to Vancouver to separate these two for me.
Hello, Hockey World.
No, I'd actually prefer the video of seeing the two of them going at it at this point in time.
Go ahead, Rick. Sorry.
Hello, Hockey World. It's Tuesday. It's not Tuesday, is it? Yeah,
it is Tuesday.
Good God. All right. Try again. Hello, Hockey World. It's Tuesday, June 11th, 2019.
I'm fire starter Michael Agello.
I'm Peacekeeper Jan Levine.
I'm Anthony Majoni from Center Ice Philly Magazine.
I'm wanted in Oakland, Pete Tessier.
And I'm wondering why Mike has a lighter so readily available. And I'm Eklund, and you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in the comings, goings in the hockey world. Russ is still en route back from Columbus via St. Louis, Columbus on his way home. So we're letting Russ drive today. And we got a full plate anyway. We got a lot of people here. And thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Jan, so much for jumping on today. As always, it's wonderful to have you here.
He doesn't thank us, Peter.
Yeah, well, you guys are, you guys are thanked all the time. So just a general thanks to everyone for coming on the show always. Because you don't have to do it, really. So let's I want to get everybody's opinions on Game 7 because we may not get a show in tomorrow because we have a lot of people driving in different directions. Russ and I are both driving up to Boston. We're gonna try to get something on right before the game, but it depends if we can. It depends if Pierre LeBrun lets us do it because he's the one who always stops me from broadcasting everywhere I go. Russ and I. You remember the last time we were in Boston? Russ and I did the show right from the boards. And Pierre LeBrun was up there, looking at us the whole time, sitting in the seats. And I just felt like at any moment that Pierre was going to bring the hammer down. Like LeBron had that power, But he fortunately let us finish the show, then we had a great time was had by all. So there's rumors flying around in the chat room, and I want to get to that a little bit because I want to start with some rumors first before we go any further because a couple are Flyers based today, and start there. There is a rumor out there, I guess, being put out by the fourth period. DeMarco. That the Canadiens have interest in Shane Gostisbehere and hearing that Andrew Shaw and Paul Byron could be targets names in a potential swap.
Well, Andrew Shaw is a Flyer type player, but that would be.
I'm again. The one thing I will get into with DeMarco again. He's based out of Quebec. Am I correct?
Yes.
So obviously, most of his sourcing, if he has that sourcing on this, is coming out of Montreal.
Yeah.
If it's Paul Byron and Andrew Shaw in consideration for Shane Gostisbehere, not a chance.
No.
I don't see it happening. I'm sorry.
I texted somebody. I promised. I texted the Flyers source. I haven't gotten back to me yet, which probably means that there's absolutely nothing to it. But we'll see.
I mean, Shaw, but not. You're not gonna. It's not gonna be Shaw. It wouldn't be Shaw and Byron. It would have to be something else. Shaw, I could see them interested in for sure. To have that layered of because you have Hartman on line 4. Shaw could potentially be on line 3, so you have a couple shift disturbers on your third and fourth line.
Yeah, right.
You see that, but the second part of the deal, Byron pushing 30. No, I don't think it would be Byron.
I would think that it would be probably a forward and a defenseman. Now we know that Montreal's defense isn't exactly deep right now, Petrie and Weber, but they have a couple young guys in Mete and you.
That was the one I was thinking of. Yes.
Yeah, if they included one of them, if it was Shaw and one of those defensemen, but the whole point here, Anthony, is that Montreal is so shorthanded on defense that I think they need a forward for D type move, and that's the reason why it may.
They also need the toughness that Andrew Shaw brings too. I mean, Montreal's not. If they give up Andrew Shaw, I wouldn't be shocked to see an Andrew Shaw, Ryan Hartman type swap with something else involved. I don't think the Flyers are super high on Hartman, but they like him.
And why they take him for Simmons?
Well, that was the best they could get for Simmons, I think, at the time. I mean, obviously that deal happened.
You had the pick in the deal as well. That had a chance to escalate. Instead, it remains a third rounder. So it's all that's still had value with the hope that things were going to climb. Had Nashville, won in the first round, which they obviously did not.
Jan,
right. And remember that deal was made at $259, or whatever, right before so that tells you that the Flyers were holding out for more, that they wanted more than that, and that's the most they could get for Simmons. That they waited that long to make it. Hartman had his great moments and had his not so great moments last year, I think, and that's what people, and he obviously has had that in a couple cities now, so he's been moved around quite a bit. So I think Shaw for Hartman, something like that could be possible, but. And maybe something else too, but I don't think Gostisbehere in Montreal makes a whole lot.
Clearly, and I want to get Jan and Peter's opinion on this. Clearly, Montreal, from their interest supposedly in Gardner as a free agent, are looking for a puck carrying offensive type of defenseman, and I can see why, because Weber he's a minutes eater. He's a really probably a Hall of Famer if he has 3 or 4 more good years. Petrie's a solid right-hand shot defenseman, but they really need somebody who can lug the mail and have some offensive ability and also probably point the power play, because I don't think Weber's got the shot, but he doesn't have the mobility anymore. But Jan, I don't see a fit there for Gostisbehere in terms of what would come back from Montreal.
Me neither. I mean, look, Shaw had a great year last year. I think all of us are kind of shocked in terms of the numbers he put up last year, based upon his career and based upon what we've seen in the past. So I kind of view last year as a bit of an aberration, although you can obviously make a similar argument about Gostisbehere when he first started. His career is kind of, I wouldn't say plateaued, but it's definitely been a roller coaster from coming into the league. But I think there's something.
Interrupt. Stan, but that horn sound you heard.
Yeah,
Sorry about that. Was my Flyers guy getting back to me with just the simple thing. Nope. Period. Nope. Period. Nope. Period.
Okay. I mean, that's that. I agree with that. But
For what it's worth, and this is a really good source.
yeah, I mean, Peter. I mean, Montreal. They could be in on Trouba. They could be in on a free agent like Gardner. They could be in on a number of defensive situations. But again, unless they're giving up a first-round pick or unless they're giving up like one of their young guys, they're not giving up Kotkaniemi because they drafted him 3rd overall and had a good rookie year. They could give up a Paling or somebody like that. But unless they're giving up something that somebody wants, Jonathan Drouin, or I don't know if Andrew Shaw really draws the type of defenseman that they might be looking for in a deal.
It won't. Yeah, it won't draw who the fans want it to draw. That's the one thing. But again, maybe it draws something else that is a little under the radar, and that's how Bergeron's looking at it, and that's the best carrot he has to get it out. So instead of thinking, a reasonably decent brand name, so to speak, a defenseman, you find someone else, and it's more of shuffling the chairs, right? And
maybe they go after PK Subban. I know. I'm just kidding.
Mike.
He's just an equal opportunity pissing everybody off today, Mike.
Yeah.
Matthew McCarron does point out that Giroux played with Byron in juniors. Yeah, I like Byron, and I think that I can see the Flyers bringing him in possibly, but I also think that Byron is also liked by Montreal a lot too. That Byron might just be the player who's better in Montreal than he is anywhere else. Honestly, he might just be that really is the place he should probably stay.
So he's the Rada Verbata of the province of Quebec.
Yeah. He's just played better there in general. The other rumor I want to throw out there, which I haven't discussed yet, I haven't heard out there much, and I'm going to write about right after this podcast, is Cam Talbot, who has not yet been officially signed by the Flyers. The feeling was that they had some sort of back agreement last year that enabled them to not play him at all, like to put him on the bench, to bring him over here, not play him, and then and still like guarantee that he would stay here. And I've heard that's not a guarantee at all anymore, and that Cam Talbot, could be here, and we all know the connection that Cam Talbot and Hart are tight, and it seemed like a perfect fit. But there are teams out there looking for goalies, and the Islanders are one, the Columbus Blue Jackets are another, and both could be exploring the option of Cam Talbot as a starter. Remember, Cam Talbot signing in Philly, he kind of knows he's sort of the backup here, right?
Right.
So if he gets a starter opportunity and starter money for the 1 year deal, you can see him head to the Islanders. You can see him head to Columbus.
Well, I mean, that would go hand in hand with what you reported about Leonard. I mean, it's the Islanders. I don't know if the Islanders are really in on. I know that I talked to Russ about this, and he was skeptical about the Islanders being in on Bobrovsky. I mean, we've heard that for a while, and it may be true, but if they're looking for a fallback position on Leonard, if Leonard wants more than they're willing to offer, a guy like Talbot for a year or two at a salary, sort of commensurate with what they're paying Greiss right now, might be a fallback position for the Islanders. I mean, we know Lou will not be held up by somebody. If the guy is asking for 4 years, he's offering him 3. He's going to stick with 3, and if he doesn't like it, he's going to go someplace else. Yeah,
Lou has his guys. Like if you want to lose guys, you can do whatever you want. If you're not want to lose guys, you got to do what Lou wants, basically. And Leonard is not yet one of Lou's guys, from what I've been told. And even though he obviously the guy had a great year, he's in the Vezina running and all that stuff. But yeah, I've been told that there's more of a deadline on him now than ever before. That sometime in the next, maybe by the weekend. Obviously, you're going to get through the award ceremony.
Leonard or Talbot in this case.
Leonard.
Okay.
Leonard. With Talbot, I haven't heard anything on a deadline, but with Leonard, I've heard a deadline for sure.
We're a little in the short times that they did have him in, that they were more underwhelmed in Talbot than they let on.
Yeah.
You would figure they would want to have that duck already taken care of.
Yeah, I expect it to be. And you heard the same things, I'm sure, that I heard, that it's just like, okay, well, he was okay with Elliott playing. Like I heard that a couple times. He's okay with Elliott playing. He understands the situation here.
Still want to play though in this.
I wouldn't be if I.
Yeah, I mean, when you're a UFA and you're on the bench, how are you okay? Unless, of course, you're. That's why I was kind of assuming if he's okay, if he really is okay with Elliott playing, and he's an unrestricted free agent, who's his value's not going up by sitting in the press box.
The only way I'd be okay with it if I was Talbot is if they had promised to sign him to a contract. If that's okay, you can play Elliott as much as you want as long as I have the deal.
But you may be looking at him, Mike, at the point of view of there may be a starter opportunity out there.
I think is the big thing.
It will be coming from him in this case, where the Flyers may have had an offer to him, and it's just like, I don't know, maybe change his mindset. I don't want to be I don't want to be the backup to Hart. Yeah. Even if I like him, if I have an opportunity to start, why would I pass that up?
I mean, remember,
that's a really good point. Like, I think with how the Flyers brought Hart in, what the expectations are for him and what the model is, and now with a new coach, 3 new coaches, a head coach and 2 new assistants with those personalities,
right?
It's going to be a very interesting situation for anyone who's going to come in and be a part of that tandem as Hart goes through his sort of development curve. And the Flyers are going to have to be prepared that not everyone's going to want to maybe go down that road with them.
And even with Alain Vigneault, obviously Talbot having plenty of experience with Alain.
Yeah.
Again, what the dynamic.
But his experience with Alain is like he might play once in a while. Remember, I mean, his experience was always that he was there, if Lundqvist got hurt. But if Lundqvist was healthy, he was getting 1 out of every. Yeah, and how many starts was he getting if Lundqvist was healthy?
1 out of every 5 at best.
Right, something like that. So that's
playing 60, 65 games a year that time.
Yeah, so that's his experience with Vigneault. I mean, the one time he played well, and then of course everybody remembers he had an epic season with the Oilers to get them into the playoffs, and played like 78 games or whatever that year it was. Some crazy number.
I mean, the goalie market is going to be fascinating because you talked yesterday about Martin Jones, and like if you go through the league, and we don't have to do it right now, obviously, but if you go through the league, I mean, how many opportunities are out there for a number 1 starter or a sort of a 1A 1B scenario? And I'd have to say at least a half a dozen teams.
More than ever before, more than I can remember in a long time. Like, I think it's it's out there in Calgary. It's out there in San Jose, those are 2 very good teams. Calgary is the best team in the Western Conference.
Chicago, possibly, if
Chicago is possible. I think Calgary is. Carolina is possible. I think
Edmonton. I'm sorry, because their starter is brutal.
That would be the most Edmonton thing ever.
Yeah, right, exactly. Last thing on the Flyers, and we'll move on. Someone in the chat room, Matthew brings it up. Does anyone find it interesting that the Flyers have yet to meet with Hayes in person? Seems like a terrible look to me.
No. I think they wanted to try to get things – again, there's a long period at this point. You don't know what the player's schedule is. We know that they're coming in. He's coming in, I believe, sometime this week or early next. I have to check exactly. But he's coming in. They're going to do the full pitch, much like they did, years ago when Shea Weber came in.
I remember that.
A little bit of a different situation there, obviously. This is a UFA situation versus an RFA.
Well,
but I would say, I don't think it's anything out of the ordinary. There's still plenty of time before the 20th. It's only the 11th, and they got until the 23rd.
The Flyers have 9 days until I'd say to the 20th, the day before the draft. I think that would be the window in terms of them getting a deal with Hayes. If they don't get it done by then then on the 23rd is the 5-day negotiating window. At that point, Hayes can talk to anybody, and there's no exclusivity there for him and the Flyers. Their advantage that they got by trading the 5th round pick is gone. So I think that by the middle of next week, if they don't have a deal, then this was a Flyer like.
Was it a conditional 5th or just a straight up 5th?
It was a straight up.
It was a straight fit. They gave the 5th. I mean, they had 10 picks in this draft, so they went to 9. So they had a little bit of capital to work with here.
Yeah.
Look, a 5th is a 5th. It's a half okay lottery ticket.
Right.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, I'm surprised it wasn't more of like a conditional 3rd or something like that.
How many picks, Peter? They had 3 going.
Jets only had 3 picks before that.
That became their 4th. So they needed picks. So they were like,
they were in a position to try and extract more.
Right.
And the Flyers knew that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple. The only thing that I would say about Hayes, about like taking their time with Hayes, is remembering there's other people that they have to sign, and not that you're worried about those players necessarily, because you can wait a little bit. But they could be offer sheeted as of July 1st. Guys like Konechny, Provorov.
Yeah, but they can qualify. They can qualify Konechny and be. I mean, there's no arbitration there. I mean, there's always the risk of an offer sheet, but
no, they will qualify them. There's no question to qualify, and they'll negotiate, but But there is the other thing that I think Hayes does more than anything else is actually puts the fire to those guys a little bit. And I think actually not having Hayes sign might have some advantages to them, because if you're negotiating with those guys now, you're the agent. You're looking at the Flyers. How much money do they really have if they've got to sign Hayes? If they don't have to sign Hayes, they have more money, so I can go harder.
But don't you think at a certain point, if Philadelphia doesn't, they'll table an offer. If they don't have an answer at a certain point, they have to move on, because they want to add a number 2 center one way or the other.
Well, they don't have to officially move on though, and I don't think they will. I don't think you're going to see them just say, "That's it, we're done," unless they can get something else for his rights again. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think they'll let it expire. I think they'll let it go to July 1st.
Right, but what I'm saying is, Zach, is that there are other Plan B scenarios in terms of trading for a number 2 center that I'm sure the Flyers are in on. I mean, there are other centers out there. Now, it doesn't mean free agents. And July 1st,
right.
It mean a trade.
For not having to do that, if they can keep some of that capital to get themselves what they want by trade, which is really a defenseman in this case.
Right.
That would be
Sanheim or Gostisbehere, yeah.
Now, I wanted to talk to Jan about this too, because I wrote today about the fact that these Kreider rumors keep coming up, out of New York, and I'm kind of surprised by it, because I mean, there's a guy that I wouldn't move at all. If I'm the Rangers, I would hold on to him for sure. And I'm not saying that there must be something good on the other line, that the other side of this, and they're probably not. They're not shopping Kreider. Like I've heard people say that. I think that's ridiculous to say they're shopping Kreider, but I think they're getting calls on him.
I mean, I think. So I wrote about this last year, and it's been written about a ton. My personal view is Kreider should be the future captain of this team.
Yeah,
it's been my view for a while. A couple of guys on my blog are right now apoplectic about what you wrote this morning, because I think I may have to take them on suicide watch, because they're huge Kreider fans. So they're ready to jump off the ledge. But I think part is twofold. One, his age. He's 28. Two, the decline he had the second half of last year after that really strong start is a factor. Third, the length of a term you're going to have to give him in a deal. You're probably looking at least a 6-year deal. And then fourth, the dollars associated with it. And then the backdrop to all this is, when do the Rangers actually move and migrate from the rebuild to moving forward to that next stage, right? So I think depending on who they get now, if it's Kakko or Hughes, and I think either one will have a different impact on the rebuild. And let's just say it's Kakko and we think Hughes is going one. With the Rangers having Kakko and the Rangers having Kravtsov coming over, and the potential of having Panarin, you're looking at a much different team offensively than you had last year. And to me, that would make it more likely than Kreider should stay, because you're transitioning quicker from what's been a view of a longer rebuild into a little bit of a shorter rebuild. I mean, that's kind of my view. If it's Hughes, the development time for him to get to that next level, to me, is probably going to take a little longer than it will be with Kakko, partly based upon his size and his ability to adjust to the league. And that may be a decision why they may decide to move Kreider. In my opinion, I would sign him 6 years. I would give him the $6 million plus a year. I would not go the $7 million. I would be giving him the captaincy, and therefore I'd be moving forward and saying, look, we want you to be part of this team. We think you are a leader. He speaks Russian. He's already taken Buchnevich under his wing. He's going to help with Kravtsov next year. He's the kind of guy that you want. Look, I know he hasn't done everything you want him to be, but you see the type of player he can be. He's become much better in his own zone. And that line last year with Zib and Buke and him was one of the best lines in the league at times. I would sign him long-term, in my opinion. But I know that there's a lot of talk and chatter out there.
Before you go, Jan, just to get your response on this, because I talked to Russ when I saw what Ack put it on his blog, and his feeling was that if it's Kreider and he's going on a new contract, it's not going to be 6. It's probably, with the escalation of prices with Skinner getting 9, it's probably going to be Kreider would probably get 7, 7.5, up to 8, and that might be the reason why they decide to move him. Because if you're going to be paying that they may not think they may not think he's worth that much.
I can understand that, but the difference I think with Skinner is Skinner has proven to be a much more proven goal scorer, right? You have a back, besides the concussions, you have a history of him being much more of a sniper and a guy who scored. I don't think you can say the same about Kreider necessarily. The potential is there. The problem is the actual hasn't always met the potential, right? You've seen bits and pieces, right? He had 28 goals this year, but he was on pace for 35 or 40 at one point. Right. He had 28 2 years ago. I do think he's a much better player now, partly because of the health scare that he had, and it made him recognize that if he doesn't get his act together, he's going to be, quote-unquote, throwing away his career because he hadn't panned out to what we thought. We saw when he first got called up, all he was told was to go straight ahead, and that's what he did. He had that big playoffs. Now he's become a much more well-rounded player, but I think the Skinner contract in general skews every contract, right? So Where else are you going to find potential scoring out there? But the fact that it's $9 million a year, look, I can understand him wanting $7.5 million, and based upon the cap going up a little bit and the Skinner contract and what Panarin's going to get, it's kind of hard to argue he deserves it. I just might be a little reluctant to give him that length of term and that amount of dollars, which I can understand why Russ is saying what he's saying in terms of possibly dealing him.
And Russ basically said that the entire media contingent in St. Louis, after hearing the Skinner deal, was wondering what was in the air in terms of hallucinogens in Buffalo, because it's a ridiculous contract. It's an insane contract. I get that, the one positive on that deal is that Skinner is getting $10 million a year for the first 6 years, and then the final 2 years of the deal, if they buy him out, it's $2 million a year. It's not that onerous. But he scored 40 goals once. He had 37 goals 3 years ago. He's a 25 to 30 goal scorer, and because he scored 40 at the right time, he's now the 5th highest paid winger in the NHL. Now that won't stay, because Marner, Rantanen, Anders Lee,
Panarin will get
Panarin will get over 10 million. But at this certain point, that deal is an earthquake in terms of other deals and with other teams, and it's going to affect everybody.
But Mike, I had everyone tell me that UFA deals don't affect RFAs.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, literally. I literally brought this up on a blog.
Tide affects all boats.
I know.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's what they say, Peter. But you telling me that Darren Ferris is not going to go to Kyle Dubas and say, Jeff Skinner, Mitch Marner, 94 points, 60 points.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. That's my point. But I brought that up because I with the Jets having 2 RFA wingers they have to deal with,
right? How
does that contract affect what Laine and Connor are going to ask for?
Yep.
And goals are the premium. And both of those guys have put up, Laine 3 30-goal seasons and Connor 2 in a row. They're going to get big money because Skinner just showed you pay for goals.
Yes.
No, they are, and I honestly just think that this is a situation where the Sabres had little choice. Like they were pretty much up against it. They have to keep Skinner. Skinner's vitally important to them. I mean, he is. You can say maybe he's not equivalent to those other wingers, but to the Sabres he is. Like to the Sabres, he's every bit that important.
I think there's in part, it's a bit of face saving for the Sabres organization as well. If they let Skinner walk after, Botterill connected Skinner to the O'Reilly trade. He said after the O'Reilly trade, that vacating that $7.5 million salary allowed them to trade for Skinner. Okay, well now if you let Skinner walk, then you basically have Tage Thompson and a number 1 pick for Ryan O'Reilly.
Right.
And I mean that's I get that, but at a certain point you have to say no. And 8.5 for Skinner, fine. 9. Not good, but anyway.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's going to fall right into where it should by the time we see everybody who signed this summer. I think right now it looks a little bit crazy, but we've talked about it before. And I came over to your side. You guys are always saying, "Oh, this guy's a $9 million player. This guy's a $9 million player." And I was like, "No, that's not possible." But I think you're going to see a lot of $9 million players this summer. I think that it's just going to happen. I mean, like Duchesne, Panarin. Obviously, these guys are going to get huge numbers.
And Hayes, I'm going to be curious with regards to Hayes because he's got 55 points. He has popped in 25, but again, he's going to pitch his 200-foot game, which they've already mentioned already. The fact that while he's primarily a center, he has versatility. They could potentially have him out there on shifts with Patrick potentially if they need heavier play. For those who are thinking it's going to be a 6x6 deal with Philly or 6.5, 6 years at 6.5 or 7, it's going to be, I have a feeling it's going to be more than that. It's going to be more than people are going to expect.
You pay Kevin Hayes $7 million. That's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
This is the market right now.
I know. We know that July 1st is a silly.
He's being slotted as your second line. He's basically, they're going to say, well, we don't put labels on the positions, but basically he's the newest piece and he's the second best pivot available on the market. Straight deal.
And this is obviously Vigneault's play, right?
Yeah, this is a Vigneault move. This is Vigneault saying, "This is the guy I want."
Right, so the Flyers have to go. They always
they're done.
They're in the honeymoon period with Vigneault right now. They go through these honeymoon periods with coaches. They've got to show Vigneault that they're committed.
Yeah.
And if this is who the guy he thinks, this is the guy he thinks, and that he might.
He's going to work that to the hilt.
Now, can we talk about the rumor that you put in?
Yes,
yes,
definitely.
You know which one I
we might want to talk about this one. All right, and that is that William Nylander. There's a lot of talk between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Arizona Coyotes, I was told.
No, Anaheim.
Oh, I'm sorry, Anaheim Ducks. Always good to start my head.
No.
Anaheim Ducks.
Yeah.
Yes, Anaheim Ducks. I was told the Arizona Coyotes would not make. There's the next rumor we'll get to after this one.
Yeah.
The Anaheim Ducks, involving William Nylander. The Ducks are in a weird spot, right? And the Ducks are always a team that has their own built-in salary cap. So they and I remember I had lunch with Brian Burke. Not to drop a name, but I just dropped a name. Had lunch with Brian Burke and the All-Star game once, and he said, and this is when he was still with Anaheim and was about to become the GM. We were projecting about to become the GM of the Maple Leafs,
right? And
he said that, yeah, the Ducks we have our own cap there. We have our own salary cap there, and the owner, you got to do what the owner says. As a GM, he says, people can sit there and say they're be cocky as you want to, but the owner tells you what you can do. That's your job. You listen to the owner tells you what you can do. So the cap space is very limited for the Ducks. The weird thing about this trade is, to me, is I've been told a top line defenseman is coming back to Toronto, which.
Well, and okay, based on
Ducks don't have a lot of.
Well, okay, based on the name that came out at the end of the season that was potentially going to be shipped out or moved, I would say it's Hampus Lindholm that we're talking about. They're not trading Fowler.
Yeah.
They have a couple young defensemen. Manson is at $4.1 million, very affordable. He's a physical defenseman. I think the Leafs would like him, but I don't think that Anaheim wants to give him up at that cap hit. And they have a couple of other young defensemen, Jakob Larson, one of their former first-round picks. If you look at their depth, I mean, we know that the Ducks, right now the whole Corey Perry thing, which I think he's going to get bought out. They want to go younger. They want to get faster. Nylander fits into that. They have some young guys like Sam Steele and the kid who I'm trying to think of his name, Troy Terry. Terry, who played between Anaheim and San Diego this year. They have young forwards coming up, but I think they need a top six guy to replace a Perry or Kessler, who I don't think is going to play ever again. And Nylander at 6.9, Lindholm is at 5.2. The Leafs probably would have to take back another player to probably balance it out. Maybe it's a multiplayer deal, but I could see this happening. I mean, if the Leafs can get two players for Nylander that play on their roster, that helps them in terms of managing their cap. And we know that I think the Ducks want to get offense and want to get somebody who can generate offense, and I think Nylander can do that. So it makes sense.
You send Nylander to Anaheim, and Anaheim, for the Leafs to take Perry, because they got it.
They can't do it, Peter. They would have.
There's no incentive for Anaheim to give up a defenseman unless it's Fowler who's locked up.
Right.
For Nylander, given their cap situation, they're taking on without jettisoning the dead weight. There's no point in getting Nylander for a few years while you've got that dead weight. It makes no strategic sense. They're going to have to offload something back to Toronto in some way. Maybe it's Perry at 50% bought out.
Well, the thing is that even at 50%, the Leafs can't afford Perry at $4.3 million. They would have to throw Marlowe in the deal. It would probably be a much bigger deal.
Which could work because Marlowe's family has moved back to San Jose.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the way I figured it out though is that Marlowe is at 6.25 for next year. The Ducks, if they were looking to clear Perry's money, it's over 2 years. But if they retain half of the salary, it really doesn't benefit them that much. It's a $10 million hit this year instead of an $8 million hit for Perry by himself, and then it's $4 million next year. They'd be better off buying him out. The buyout would be $2.5 million times 4 years.
I just got a text from somebody involved in this, and they were saying to me that the name that they heard connected to Toronto, and I'm not sure how this connects because again, this is just a player, and I would text it back, like, what do you mean, or who could possibly the other way, or whatever. Was Josh Mahura, who's a defensive prospect.
But I mean, in case.
I'm not saying he is the guy I'm talking about, because the other source told me this is a top line prospect coming back.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Mahura would not be a top line prospect. He's
Russ would know more about Mahura than I would. He's on an ELC right now. They're not trading Nylander for somebody who may not even be ready to play in the NHL. They need a top 4 defenseman. They're not trading him for somebody other than a top 4, and that's why they're not trading Fowler. I doubt they're trading Manson. There's been speculation over the last 2 years that they would be willing to trade Lindholm. So
here's because some of the numbers on Mahura. I mean, he has played 17 games in the NHL. He's got 1 goal, 4 assists.
Yeah.
But his last year at Regina, in 60 games, he had 22 goals and 47 assists. So he's a big time defensive scoring machine.
Okay, but again,
I'm not saying he's ready yet, but it is possible here that
him as a throw-in, sure. But as the main piece, not a chance.
Yeah, no, I don't. I'm not saying it's the main piece. Again, I mean, these two are 2 different sources altogether. So understand that, like the one said the top prospect, this is just a name he's heard connected from Anaheim to Toronto. So those are 2 totally different things. They may have nothing to do with one another.
Right.
But they could, so he's watching the show, this scout, so he kind of.
And I'm sure he knows more about the inner workings than I do. But I'm just saying, the value.
It's obviously for William Nylander, what you're saying, what I think we all can agree, they need, if they're moving a Nylander or Kapanen or Kadri, they're getting a guy who's going to be in the top 4 defense. That's what they have. So that's going to step in there right away. And that's pretty obvious. So I think that that we can all agree on.
And only if they trade Zaitsev, only if they're able to not have to retain or not take a salary back, does the name Jake Gardiner get back in the mix with Toronto, because they simply don't have the room, do not have the room to sign Gardiner to what he expects to get. He's probably going to be a $6 million defenseman from in terms of other teams bidding up for him. The Leafs can't afford that.
An interesting thing I heard today, and then I want to get into we'll get into our game 7 thoughts, because I'm going to have to leave pretty much close to 4. But this is the last thing I'll say is this. I talked to an assistant GM today from a team in the Western Conference, in Canada. That's a really good hint there. I'm giving you a lot.
Only 4.
He might not be on the Canadian team. He's in Canada right now. There you go.
Okay.
Anyway, he's in Western Canada right now, which a lot of people are, because that's where they vacation. But anyway, he's in Western Canada right now.
Which means he's in Kelowna.
Okay, so anyway, he said to me that their team was looking at the craziness that is this UFA period and all the players available and all the possibilities out there, and they are going to be gunning for the second tier guys right off the bat, like that. They are going to ignore the craziness and ignore the 6, because their beef is that there are some they're hearing from the agents. Some of the second tier agents are really nervous and want to get deals done, because if you're a second tier player, and not one of these guys who's going to get $8 million, but let's say a guy who's going to get $2 to $5 million. If you're in that range, you're nervous about all the money that's going to the top players, and that there's not going to be anything left for you. Well, so you're in a situation where some of these second tier guys are being very aggressive, and they feel like they can get some deals and some bargains for these second tier players.
So that would be Brandon Tanev in your case, Peter.
Yeah, second tier.
There's a lot, like a Ryan Dzingel would fall into this category.
Dzingel is a guy I wrote about on the Hot Stove, and he is second tier, but he can put up points. He's actually increased his rates of scoring, and he's done it with some pretty awful teams. The interesting thing about this is if you're an agent, your sole goal is also not to get your client just the max amount of money. Is to put him in a place that he's going to have success. And he's going to get ice time. The coach is going to believe him. I mean, you could get courted by the Leafs and it could be his childhood dream. And next thing you know, you're Babcocked. Like you have no way of knowing. And that's also part of it too.
That is
like the rush to cash is great, but you've also got to remember, where am I playing? What are the prospects for me and the team?
Well, to that point, Peter, and you're right. If using the example of Toronto, if it's not somebody that Babcock is involved in getting, then you could be somebody like Nick Patan who gets put on the sideline and not played. A guy, the guy that sort of fits your category, I think, is Wayne Simmons.
Yeah, I was going to say Wayne Simmons is in that category too.
Because I almost think, and I know the conventional wisdom is he's going to look for a multi-year deal. He's going to look for as much money as he possibly can. He almost would be in a better situation if he picked a spot where he knew he could be successful, signed for 1 year and at decent money, put up a 25 to 30 goal season, and then went out as a UFA. Yeah. I think he'd probably, Tyler, and we're talking about two different type of players here, but Tyler Ennis got bought out by Minnesota last year, came to the Leafs, signed a minimum 1 year contract, got 12 goals in 51 games, played really well. Now he's going to get multi-year offers from teams. You have to pick your spots. I think that you're going to have free agents who will pick their spots, put themselves in the best situation, and if they succeed, they set themselves up for another big contract.
Yep. Now, Marcus Johansson, who's playing in Boston, is another one in this situation. Like, there's quite a few of them. I think Simmons is a really good example, though. If I'm Simmons, I just stay relevant for 1 more year, and then I go to Seattle. Because if I'm Seattle, I'm taking Simmons in a heartbeat because he's the perfect guy you want to have.
Well, he'd be a UFA if he takes a 1 year contract.
Right, but he'll be UFA, and he signs with Seattle. He's like that's the kind of guy that you would absolutely want in your room. You need a leader like that. You need somebody who's been through stuff, and
he would be popular with the fan base.
Perfect fit for that, Yeah. But Simmons will be. Simmons is it's amazing how little he's been in the room reel at all, and it also is kind of incredible how much his stock fell quickly.
Yeah.
Part of that again with the amount of injuries and how much it really slowed. It's surprising how quick how his peak. And then how quickly he dropped shortly afterwards. And the big question again, what are you getting out of Wayne Simmons? And if you ask anybody, you would have figured Nashville would have been a perfect spot for him, Laviolette system, but he barely could keep up with the play there.
The Predators are such a fast team. I mean, there are some really that was the thing that no one really took into account, right? I mean, the Flyers are a lot slower. I mean, they look better on the Flyers because he could, they put him with.
Honestly, he didn't. After the injuries, after his All-Star year, his speed noticeably
dropped off.
The amount of injuries that he had, it was expected.
But there is a benefit for some of these players to take a short-term deal. I mean, you would think that they want as much term and as much salary as possible, but teams might not be willing to sign Simmons for 3 or 4 years anymore based on what he did at the end of last year. If he signs a 1 year deal, I'm sure maybe a 2 year deal. I'm sure there'll be at least 5 or 6 teams that will be bidding on him, and then he sets himself up for another contract.
I blame a little bit.
Maybe he's also getting on. He signs a 2 year deal. You come out of that, he's got to be defying father time for anyone to give him a longer one. Look, I think there's a lot of teams who could use a Wayne Simmons, not because of what he's doing on the ice, but because what he does around the team.
Yes.
The Jets probably being one who desperately need that kind of personality in the team and helping it from a leadership standpoint. But there's no way they're going to pay him, say, the classic Chevy aging vet deal, the 2 years at 4.5 or 5 million per. It just doesn't make sense. It might make sense for Simmons to take it.
Right.
But not for the Jets to offer it. But that's the kind of deal he should hope to get.
But based on what he did last year, if say he signs a 1 year, $3 million contract with someone and puts up 25 goals, he'll get more interest next year than he would this year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's just, he has to be healthy. And I also do a little, I mean, the injury in Nashville hurt him a lot when he got hurt there. And because they brought him, Laviolette brought him there to fix the Predators power play, which was horrendous. And they never really got a chance to build the power, because if you're going to do that, you actually build the power play around what Simmons does in the power play, which is very specific.
Right.
And they never really got, so when Simmons played on the power play with them, I was watching, he wasn't like parked in his normal spot. He wasn't doing this stuff. And if you're going to use Simmons in the power play, you got to use Simmons in the power play as he was used in Philadelphia, which worked, but it didn't, he never really got around to that. All right, let's get quickly to game 7 here and our thoughts. I'm going to stay with my prediction beginning of the series game, Blues in 7. I felt that way the whole time. I feel like the Blues, there was way too much pressure on an inexperienced team to win that game 6 at home. I just felt like there was no way they were going to be able to pull that off. Honestly, I was that confident in that one.
Well,
and this one, I think when you're coming back now, the pressure shifts to Boston. It's odd that there isn't the pressure in Boston is very different than anywhere else because that city is not like crying out for a winner. It's very bizarre.
Mm.
It's like, normally when a team has a chance to win something, like win a championship, the fans would be nervous. I don't get a nervousness. The Bruins fans are like, maybe Bruins are going to win as well. Like that.
I think we saw an example of that last night in Toronto in a different sport because
it's hard. It's hard to finish off at home. It is really hard to finish off.
The fans in Jurassic Park were nervous, and I think the Raptors played nervous late in the game. No, I'll just say I picked the Bruins in 6. So if it's Bruins in 7, I'm off by a game. I think they're the clear-cut favorite in this game based on experience, but doesn't rule out that St. Louis is going to have to, and I used this example yesterday, St. Louis is going to have to play a game on the road like Boston did in Vancouver in 2011. Get the lead, pound them physically. And
they were doing that for 2 periods, Mike. They were on Boston.
Yeah.
And I felt that, again, they just got frustrated by the third and trying to crack grass.
Well, Anthony, I didn't think that they were as physical in Game 6 as they were in Game 4 and 5. I felt that there was a little tentative nature there. Russ was at the game. He said
I think there's something to Rask, them not being able to crack Rask,
right, and also
the back off a little bit, which they cannot afford to do, obviously in Game.
Well, then what happened is that they got in the way of the Rask got in the way of their game plan and made them stop dumping the puck in the second period. And in the second you stop dumping the puck in, they aren't able to use their physicality to its best. I mean, their physicality is used to its best when they're dumping the puck in the zone. And then
also 1 for 18 on the power play in this series is abysmal.
That's not going to work.
Oh yeah, and the Bruins have been great in the power play. And so that the Bruins have, the goaltending and power play thing, the theory about, those are the 2 things that win in the playoffs. The Bruins have both of those things going for them. So that's a tough one.
Although that being said, when the Bruins won the cup against Vancouver, if I recall, their power play was absolutely abysmal.
I think it was terrible. It was really terrible.
Their power play was spectacular.
They traded for Thomas Caberlet just to improve their power play, and it didn't work.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a wild game. I do think we're going to overtime. I think we're going to break that. I just feel like it feels like we're going to break that. Which would be fun. That would be a lot of fun.
The first time since Tony Leswick in 1954.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to 2 Game 7 Stanley Cup Finals. I think in Detroit, and the Detroit one.
You were in Vancouver for
Pittsburgh, and I was of course in the Vancouver thing, which turned into a city riot afterwards.
Yeah, you were dodging burning cars.
I was fighting off tear gas to get home to my hotel. Yeah, that was a crazy night. But this one, I think the Blues will just exhale. I think they'll relax. I think that after what they went through, they're gonna relax and they're gonna come out flying. And they have the ability to run the Bruins into the ground if they play the right way, because the Bruins defense is definitely hanging on by a thread right now. There's no case if the Bruins had another series to play, they'd be in trouble. I really feel like that. Where I don't think the Blues would be, but the Bruins have they would be in trouble. The Bruins have to be thankful that this is a best of 7, not like a best of 9, because there's no way they would be getting through anymore this at all. All right, so that's all the time we have for tonight. Thank you, Anthony, as always. Wonderful having you here. Remember, without the buzz, folks, it is just hockey. We will talk to you maybe tomorrow. Stay tuned. We'll see. If not tomorrow, then on Friday for sure, or Thursday. Thanks. Talk to you then. Bye.